my favorite topics. This is one of my favorite topics to be talking about. But we do have a packed agenda. So if we can go to the next slide real quick. Perfect. Yeah, so packed agenda for you guys today. I do want to just mention that this is going to be a lot of information, and I totally get it. It can be very overwhelming. So just sit back, relax, ask your questions at the end, and but we're going to be covering a lot. So we're going to start with who we are, what advocacy means. Then we'll go into the Reeve Foundation's Grassroots Advocacy Toolkit, talk about connecting with your legislators, and then share ways to stay involved. And like I said, we will have a Q&A session. So that's just a real quick overview of the agenda. If we can go to the next one, oh, there's my picture. But for those of you that are unfamiliar with the Reeve Foundation, I listed our mission statement on the screen here. So the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation is dedicated to curing spinal cord injury by advancing innovative research and improving quality of life for individuals and families impacted by paralysis. In 2002, the Reeve Foundation's Paralysis Resource Center, which we'll go into more later on, opened its doors with the leadership and vision of Dana Reeve. And as you all know, if you don't know who the Reeves are, Christopher Reeve was Superman. He was one of the original Supermans. And after his spinal cord injury in 1995, the Reeve family really struggled to find new resources to assist them with this new normalcy after his spinal cord injury. So through the PRC, we offer a free, comprehensive national source of informational support for people living with paralysis, their families, and caregivers. The primary goals of the NPRC are to foster involvement in the community, promote health, and improve quality of life for those individuals living with or impacted by paralysis. Um, Real quick, I know a lot, like we're talking about paralysis, spinal cord injury, but I do want to mention that the Reeve Foundation serves anyone who's impacted. It's not just if you have a spinal cord injury or not. It can be from any type of other disease or disability. We have resources that can serve you, and it's all for free. So now that I'm talking about the NPRC, let's go into the next slide. And this gives a crazy overview of what our impact is for the community. And I'm just going to talk a little bit of some of those programs there. So it truly is unmatched, the PRC. And again, I know we do a lot of acronyms. So PRC stands for Paralysis Resource Center. And sometimes if you hear me say NPRC, I'm saying the National Paralysis Resource Center. Again, they're interchangeable terms. So I apologize if I'm just going to stick to the PRC. But like I was saying, we have a lot of programs and services that we provide to the paralysis community. And I'm just going to go into a couple of them. So first, I'm going to start off with our information specialists. So at the PRC, we have a dedicated team of information specialists who provide one-on-one custom support for anyone who's impacted by paralysis. The team researches and answers inquiries ranging from finding rehabilitation facilities to deciphering insurance issues to locating an adaptive fitness center in your area and everything in between. So it really doesn't matter what your question is. If it's about paralysis, you want to call them up, totally do that because again, it's all for free. And to date, our IS team has assisted over 130,000 individuals, and that's since the inception of the PRC in 2002. We also have a quality of life grants program, and I believe SCI Boston is a grantee of the Reeve Foundation, which is awesome. But this program was pioneered by no other than Dana Reeve, and it awards grants to nonprofit organizations that impact and empower people living with paralysis, their families, and caregivers. The program was incepted in 1999 and has awarded over $46 million to over 3,900 nonprofit programs in all 50 US states. I also want to talk about the peer and family support program, which fosters peer-to-peer support via trained and certified mentors. And you're going to hear today, while we're talking about advocacy, that the best source of knowledge is from experience. And for people who are impacted by paralysis, learning to navigate like this new changing world can be challenging and overwhelming. So the Reeve Foundation created this peer and family support program for anyone impacted by paralysis, and it just shows a way to connect others that are also impacted to try to find support and a way to navigate this new normal. And to date, over 27,000 people have received support from 560 peer mentors, which is absolutely phenomenal. And we always are accepting new mentors, or you can get a mentor or become a mentee. You just can apply on our website, and someone will reach out to you. And then two more I just want to go over and then we'll move on. So sorry about that. But this is just a very important programs. But we do have a military and veterans program, and it's designed to support the unique needs of current service members and veterans, regardless of when they served or how they were injured or how their injury was obtained. And last but not least, I'm sure you all have maybe seen it, and I know maybe Donna and Caitlin, if I know Donna's on the call, but maybe Caitlin has saw it at the Reeve Summit this past year. But we do have a paralysis resource guide, which is a free 442-page booklet. I counted the pages earlier this morning, just because I was like, I know it's over 400, but it's a comprehensive illustrated information tool for people impacted by paralysis and for caregivers and family members as well. We kind of refer to our paralysis resource guide as like the holy Bible of paralysis. And I know that's kind of fitting because we did just elect a new pope. So there we go. But the guide is available in multiple languages. It's available electronically, all accessible, and hard copy. If you would like a hard copy of the paralysis resource guide, you can go to our website, christopherreeve.org, and you can order one and they will be shipped directly to you. But to date, we've distributed over 235,000 copies within the paralysis community. So I always love this slide just because it does give, like I was saying in the beginning, a great overview of the PRC. But I'm going to stop there. I'm going to hand it off to Vita, and I'm just looking forward to the rest of the webinar with everyone. So thank you all for having me.
Thank you, Gerard.
No problem.
So most of you already know who I am, but I am Vita Brown. I'm the advocacy coordinator here at SCIboston. I've had the pleasure of working here for the last year and a half or so. And it's, and before that, actually, I benefited from all of the wonderful programs that we have here. And it gives me a lot of really great pleasure to be able to continue SCIboston's mission, which is to reach, inspire, support, and empower individuals with spinal cord injuries and disease and their families through the advocacy program, with our goal being to give you the tools to use your voices to speak up and be engaged on the issues that are most impacting you. So let's get started. We're going to start at the very beginning, so that we're all on the same page here. And so what is advocacy? What does that really mean? We have a definition here on the slide, which is advocacy is any action taken to influence social, organizational, or policy change, which is a pretty broad definition that encompasses a ton of different actions, methods, or forms of advocacy. Which brings me to the next slide, which is what types of advocacy are there? There are a ton of different ones, as I mentioned. The four that you see on this slide here are some of the main ones. And I wanted to separate this out for you all because I think a lot of you are already engaging in advocacy and you might just not be aware of it, right? So taking the first type of advocacy is self-advocacy. This is when you are communicating your needs and rights to someone else. In other words, this is speaking up for yourself. I'm sure most of you are doing this all the time. And then there's individual advocacy. That is when one person is communicating the needs and rights of another person on behalf of that person. So say you're a loved one and you communicate to another person about your loved one with a spinal cord injury. That's individual advocacy. And then we have systems advocacy, which is any attempt to change policy, laws, or rules at some sort of agency. Systems advocacy can occur at any place that has policy, laws, or rules, such as businesses, schools, or hospitals, or with any person that has the ability to change those policy, laws, or rules, such as legislators, governors, or CEOs. Engaging in systems advocacy with a legislator is called legislative advocacy, which is what we will focus a lot on today. And then finally, we have grassroots advocacy, which involves communities coming together to achieve specific goals. And grassroots advocacy can also be, used in systems advocacy or other forms of advocacy like legislative advocacy. It hinges on connecting with your community to create that change. Now let's go into some examples, because I know I do better with examples rather than just definitions. Um, so that first example for self-advocacy is going to be communicating to your doctor's office that you need assistance with transfers. Oh, and I'm also going to use a specific, like this specific issue of receiving issues with transferring from your wheelchair to a medical exam table for all of them to highlight the differences between the 4 different types of advocacy. So again, for self-advocacy, this would be communicating to your doctor's office that you need assistance with transfers. In this instance, you might remind them that under the ADA, doctors' offices are required to provide accommodations such as assistance with transfers. For individual advocacy, this would be a loved one or a patient advocate communicating to your doctor's office that you need assistance with transfers. For systems advocacy, there are 2 different examples on this slide. The first one is working to change your doctor's office's policy around patient transfers. That might look like convincing someone to change internal rules around how often staff receive transfer training. The second could be working with legislators to pass a law that requires all doctors' offices to have patient lifts on site. And finally, for grassroots advocacy, this would look like joining with your community to take action around the safety of patient transfers in medical offices. For example, this action could be a public awareness campaign through social media that explains how common it is to face access discrimination in healthcare as a person who uses a wheelchair. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Gerard.
That was wonderful. Thank you again, Vita. This was an excellent overview of what advocacy is, and just for including those examples, they're very important. So now that we have an idea of what advocacy is, we need to make an impact, and we do need the right tools for it. So if we can go to the next slide. So I'm very excited, and this has been a year-long project that I've been working on. It was just released back in February, but I would like to introduce you all to the Reeve Foundation's Grassroots Advocacy Toolkit, and I apologize if you can't see it on my camera just because I have a blurred background. Sometimes it messes that up. But it gives any type of advocate the insights to take action, whether it's advocating for caregiving support, accessible air travel, disability rights, or affordable accessible housing. This guide will help you share your story, connect with your lawmakers, and make your voice heard. So, as you can see on the slide here, we have many different topics that the Grassroots Toolkit covers. And I do also want to preference that we were able to make this toolkit with partnership through the Muscular Dystrophy Association, because we do have a lot of shared advocacy goals. But these topics, we have introduction to advocacy, what it means, why it matters, and how to get involved. Vita was just talking a little bit about that earlier. Engaging with the United States Congress. So how to connect with your lawmakers and share your message. We have then sharing your story. It talks about crafting a compelling narrative to make an impact. Then we also have it. Then we talk about a certain issue topic, such as caregiving, policies, resources, legislative solutions for caregivers. We also talk about accessible air travel, so the challenges, rights, and advocating for certain change for air travelers with disabilities. We then go into knowing your rights, such as what is the ADA, knowing your healthcare rights and disability protections. And then we close off the toolkit by talking about affordable, accessible housing, such as policies and advocacy actions that certain individuals can take to create change. The toolkit also includes, like I was saying, advocacy strategies and tips, policy and legislative insights, real stories from real advocates. We'll talk more a little bit about some of the Reeve Foundation's advocacy programs, but really this toolkit was made for advocates by advocates. So I wanted to make sure I got all the insight and making sure that all the information in the toolkit is correct and it represents our community very, very appropriately. Um, and like I said, we also have a lot of guides, templates on how you can take action and how it's kind of like a roadmap basically on what you can do. Um, the toolkit is available in print and in digital. I will include the link in our file and I'll send it to Heidi so she can send it in the follow-up email. But you can access digitally, it's fully accessible. And then I also have a QR code on this, oh, sorry, the screen, on the screen right here, which if you have your phone out and you would like to scan it, it'll take you right to the advocacy toolkit link. And you can view along while we're doing this presentation if you would like. So I'm just really grateful. But yeah, if we can go to the next slide, that's kind of where I
Oh,
was getting at. No, 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 it's okay. That's where I was getting at. But anyway, so in the Grassroots Advocacy Toolkit, I'll just post it up again. It includes a lot of helpful tips for sharing your story. So how do you do that? Like when meeting with the legislator's office, it can often feel very complicated and even nerve-wracking and sometimes intimidating to put those words that you're feeling and your experiences together. But just know that the reason that you're sharing your story is to foster change in our community. So these are a couple of tips that I'm gonna just kind of go over the slide, do a little more, elaboration on them, but they can help your thoughts flow more freely. And specifically, I'm mentioning chapters 2 and 3 in the Grassroots Advocacy Toolkit. Um, but I do want to just pause real quick before we go any further, it's always important that you all remember that you should never feel obligated to share your story. But if you want to, or wondering how do you share it, this toolkit has very helpful tips to assist you to break through that writer's mental block. So first off is be relatable. Use terms that most people will understand. And like we were saying in the beginning, I'm using some acronyms, like we have to make sure that our audience understands them. So just, make sure that you're using certain terms, adjust your story to fit your audience. So whatever legislator you're meeting with, talk about your community. Use conversational tone and avoid that jargon that, in healthcare, in defense, all over I used to work on the Hill, so a lot talking about a lot of different topics in the United States government. It's all acronyms, and I wish they had made a huge dictionary for it, but I still have not found that. But so just avoid that jargon. Remember to keep it brief, though. Usually, meetings with your legislator, they're not very long. Sometimes I've done meetings in the hallways with certain staff members. That's because that's how timely these meetings can be. So just make sure that sharing when you're sharing story, it's concise, a few minutes or less, and it's easy and impactful for someone to remember. And I always love to tell my advocates like that come to me to like ask for help on sharing their story, you know, just make the person that you're talking to go back home, be having dinner with like their family or whoever, and just think, who I talked to today? And that's usually something that will make them remember your story because it will stay in their head. And I've done it multiple times myself, even when I talk to certain advocates in our community. Like I'm just like, I think about it at the end of the day. Um, but like I said, yes, congressional meetings are short, so just make it concise. Next up is highlight the key points. So focus on the most impactful aspects of your story so your audience remembers those important parts. And again, that's what I was saying, like make them remember you. Make sure you're genuine, honest, and true to yourself when you're telling your story. So that's staying authentic. And then last but not least, um, you want to make sure that you're including a call to action because yes, your story and experiences are amazing and very impactful, but then it's like, okay, well then what do you want me to do about it? Meaning the legislator. So you want to make it very clear what you're asking the office or whatever audience you're talking to, tell them what to do basically. Now, you're going into this meeting, you have a meeting scheduled. You just want to make sure you rehearse the story. It's like your elevator speech. And when speaking with legislators, you want to focus on how they can make a difference in their districts, in their community. So make sure you're focusing your story on like issues that are happening in your community because they want to help you. And always remember, they do work for you. But your voice does have power and it does matter. So if we can go to the next one, we could talk a little bit more about molding and shaping your story. And I'll give some helpful tips for that as well. But the toolkit also gives readers questions to stimulate some thoughts. And again, like I was saying, referencing chapters 2 and 3 of the toolkit. So one of the questions could be like, what motivates you? Describe your experience, and your caregiving role. How has this disability impacted your life? What barriers have you faced, especially taking it back to your own community? So highlight some barriers, some physical, emotional, social barriers. If there's a certain issue in your local community, you want to highlight that to your member's office. Um, you can also talk about like how have you overcome or adapted to certain obstacles. So sharing resources or strategies that have helped. Um, and then, like I said, what do you want change makers or legislators to understand? Like, what do you want them to focus on? It's really important that you always tie it back to that ask. So, um, last but not least, what support do you need from the policymakers? Like you're saying, you're ending with that ask. It's truly important to clearly state your advocacy goal, what you're looking for the office to do. And now I know I'm always bringing it back to talking to members of Congress, but again, like Vita was saying in the beginning, this can be any type of organization, or it could be a for-profit company, or it can be, state, local legislators, or the federal Congress. But I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to actually throw it back to Vita now. I know we're passing it back and forth, right, Vita? So
Yes.
take it away.
Alrighty. So almost as important as sharing your story is knowing the issue. That means you want to do your research, you want to know the facts, you want to just be knowledgeable about what you're talking about. And so some questions are on the screen that you can consider as you are kind of like doing research before you speak to anyone. And some of my favorites to ask myself are, is there a current law or policy related to this issue? So for example, and these are pretty broad, is the issue related to the ADA, Section 504, or the Fair Housing Act, or more local laws? And if there is a related law or policy, how does that shape your messaging? How does the current law influence what how you want the person you're speaking to hear what you're saying? And so then the next question I like to ask myself is there a proposed law or policy related to the issue? And if so, what would the proposed law or policy do? And so that could be, is there a bill? You can go onto one of the um, governmental sites and look at, any current bills. Maybe there's a couple about, say, wheelchair repair. You want to take your time and you want to kind of, get the facts straight on what's the differences between each of these proposed laws and figure out, why is one point important for one specific bill versus another. Um, Another question to ask yourself is, what are some potential impacts of creating this change? So how does this change affect you and the community? Is there any potential opposition? Is there any potential areas for support with other and connection with other organizations? How can you work together with people? And, are we going to be able to come to a common ground that makes our advocacy more powerful because it's going to impact more than a narrow part of the community? You know, for example, policies that might benefit not only people with spinal cord injuries, but people with paralysis, right? Um, and then what is the public's current opinion or knowledge about the issue? So sometimes having the public be aware that an issue even exists can be the first step in creating the change. If you have more people on your side and understanding what the issue is, then you can communicate with legislators, and having all of these people communicate at the same time with legislators for all communicating for the same issue, that means that they're going to be more likely to listen to a handful of people, right? So, what are some of the key issues? And I'm sure many of you are already familiar with these, and there are many, many more than are on this screen here. Um, so we have caregiving, that's a big one, and it is mentioned in the Reeve Foundation's toolkit. And so that could be, access to consistent, competent caregivers, access to living wages for those caregivers, to training, support for family caregivers, and so on. Transportation, that could be air travel. It could be, accessible parking, housing, that could be affordable, accessible housing, that could be access to home modifications or transitional living situations. Health access, which could include, as we mentioned before, access to diagnostic, medical, and dental equipment, such as being able to transfer from your wheelchair to the medical exam table. And then wheelchair repair, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with, but that could include things such as right to repair, or access to prompt repairs in loaner wheelchairs, or you know, coming up with ways to streamline prior authorizations and so on. There's also like um, employment as an issue, research, rehabilitation, the length of rehabilitation stays, um, schooling and education. There's so many different areas that could use a little bit of work, and areas in which you can get involved in. And it's really important that what you work on is what you are the most passionate about and feel the most connected to. Okay. I'm going to throw it over to Gerard now.
Thank you again, Vita. And so now that we saw some of the issues, again, that slide did not show all of them, and we all know that. But we're going to talk a little bit about the types of advocacy actions that you, as a constituent, as an advocate of our community, can take. So here are some simple ways that grassroots advocates have taken action, and I'm going to start the first with phone calls and emails because they're quick ways to let your lawmakers know, or whoever your representative is, state, local, who you are, what your position is on certain issues, and for them to get to know you better. Next, another type of action could be petitions and fundraisers. So those really help rally public support and raise awareness. Research and pamphleting, and sorry, that's a tongue twister for me. Pamphleting can make sure that you're informed and spread accurate info within our own community. Workshops and info sessions, which I would kind of say what we're doing right now could be classified as a workshop or info session. They can educate and empower others to get involved, which is what we want you guys to do. Um, and then we go into rallies. Social media campaigns are great for visibility and to building momentum on a certain type of advocacy issue. I always just want to just mention that the power of social media is certainly just unbelievable because if you use the correct hashtags, you tag your members of Congress, you tag your whatever type of legislator you have, it can raise issues to them because again, they might not be monitoring their own social media account. Some do, some don't. Um, but their staff members do, and they can be like, hey, their staff member can bring it up being like, oh, you just got pinged on, or sorry, pinged, like subtweeted, or not subtweeted, I don't know if the word is, but like tagged in a post, like maybe you should look at it type of thing. um, and then finally, which we're going to go into some more steps later on in this webinar, is engaging directly with your elected officials through meetings, through town halls. And again, it's one of the most effective ways to advocate because you are coming right to them. You're right in their face. You're sharing your experiences, sharing your concerns. Again, we have to remember time and place. Like if they're talking to, you don't want to just interrupt them if they're at like a town hall, but town halls are a way for legislators to get the pulse of the people. Um, and I say pulse of the people because I did learn that from my high school U.S. history teacher when we learned about civics 101 on like the makeup of the House and the Senate, which is also available in the toolkit. It's not to plug it there again, but just doing that. So this, every state gets two senators, but the House of Representatives is based on population and I mean states. Sorry, I'm messing that up. But I'm just saying is the House of Representatives, the member is closer to the people. They take the pulse of what the people want and they bring it back to Washington, D.C. So engaging directly with them is they're getting what you're feeling. And you can help educate them to inform them to make like correct legislative choices. But I want to kind of go on to now. We're talking all about like this is what you can do. Let's connect with our legislators. So if we can go to the next slide, connecting with your legislators, a big part of grassroots advocacy is building those relationships, those professional relationships to educate your elected officials at every level of government. But it really starts with knowing who they are. Like how do you could be on this call right now and be like, I don't know who my member of Congress is. Well, we're gonna talk you through on how you can find that out and how you can start making those first steps to connecting with your legislator. But I just want to clarify when we talk about elected officials, referring to people in the executive branch, like the president, a vice president, the governors in states, and mayors in local communities. And in the legislative branch, we're talking about senators, House members, and just any member of Congress. But these are the individuals that you'll be in most contact with in your advocacy work. And definitely it's your House member, and then the Senate's next, and then personally, I've never done really any advocacy issues trying to reach out to the president or vice president, but usually, I mean, there are issues there. I'm not saying there's not. It's just that I've had most experience in just like reaching out to your congressional members, local and state representative members. But I'm going to pass it back to Vita to further explain on how you can find out who your legislators are, both at the state level and federally.
Thanks, Gerard. Yeah. And I'm glad that you like went into that a little bit because I hope this graphic makes sense. But it took me a long time to figure out kind of like where the lines were and who I'm supposed to talk to, and the executive branch versus the legislative branch. And maybe you're all better with words and definitions than I am. That's definitely possible. But it was like really confusing for me. And we often talk about legislative advocacy, which is, engaging with legislators, versus executive advocacy, which is engaging with the executive officials, because it's kind of one of the more common ones. And while you can, as Gerard said, try to talk to the president or the vice president, it, is a little bit more difficult. And as you go down, like, you might have more success talking to your governor or your mayor. You might have a lot of success talking to your mayor about issues. But back to who are my legislators? On the federal or national side of things, you have a Senate and a House, and that is known as, Congress a lot of the time. They're also known as your congressional members. They're also known as your US senators or your US representative. These are all terms that are kind of interchangeable to discuss these legislators that represent you on a national level. And then you have the state, which also has a Senate and a House, but those are state senators and state representatives. Um, and those are different people than the ones on the federal level. And they kind of they represent a smaller number of people from the national representation, right? So it's a lot easier to develop a relationship or develop a connection with your state senator or your state representative because they just are representing fewer people. And so they might remember you more. And as Gerard was saying, that your House congressional member, that's based off of population, right? So they have the pulse of the people on national issues because they are representing fewer people than your state senator. Well, your US senator. See, the terms, they're so
Mhm.
easy to mix up, right?
They are.
Um, and so then when it comes to the state level of things, it's an even smaller group of people that you are kind of like fighting with to get attention on you and your issue. And then locally, if you are in a city in Massachusetts, then you will have a city council, and those are your legislators. Also in New England, if you're in a town, you also have town meetings, which is a very, when I came here from Ohio, I was like, this is an interesting form of direct representational, like democracy. But it's a very cool process. And for those of you who do live in an area that has a town meeting, a lot of you, if you're a registered voter, you can just show up and you can vote directly on the issues that are being, you know, brought to become laws of your specific municipal area. So now that we know who everyone is, how do we contact them? If you
Vita,
go,
Vita, could I just
Yes.
jump in real quick?
Yeah, of course.
So remember we were talking about like executive advocacy, like in the executive branch. I totally forgot that there is a way
Oh,
you can participate in executive advocacy because you have to think about the regulatory federal agencies and notice of public comment periods. So like
mm,
when an agency puts out a new rule because they're required by law to do that, they put out a comment period for the public to comment on. And another form of advocacy, not just interacting with your legislators, is taking action on submitting a federal public comment. So that just slipped my mind. I just wanted to just talk about that real quickly, just and then we
yeah.
can kind of move on. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That there's, I mean, there's so many ways to get involved. And
There
I think that's
is,
kind of like
yeah,
the point that we're making here is that, you know, you can go in so many different directions with things and you can still be effective. You can find the area in
exactly.
which you're most comfortable with
Mhm.
being involved and do that, and you can still create massive amounts of change.
Exactly. Yeah, so you could totally like in the toolkit we talk about that's why I was like I know there was probably there's executive actions that advocacy actions that
Yeah.
people could take. So in the toolkit we do go over like the public comment periods and how people can get involved. So didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to put that out there.
No, no worries. Thank you. That's a good addition. Um, so finding your legislator. So if you want to find your legislator, on the federal side of things, so your congressional member, going to congress.gov is a really great place to go.
Mhm.
You can find that link on the screen, but I'm also going to put it in the chat a little bit later so that you can access it there. And you type in your address, and then it's going to come up with, you know, who your senator and who your representative is. It also has a couple of features where if you actually make an account at congress.gov, then you can sign up for email alerts for things, so you can follow certain bills, which is another cool feature if there's specific things that you want to keep an eye on. The MAlegislature.gov site, that is the equivalent of congress.gov for the state of Massachusetts. And I mean, I'm probably biased, but I am partial to this site because of all of the really cool features that it has, where you can create an account and you can, you know, you can follow hearings, you can follow
Mhm.
bills, you can follow legislators themselves, you can follow committees, you can get alerts about things. There's even, you know, you can win badges for doing different things and like get points. Like there's a literal game involved with it sometimes, which I think is just like a cool way to get familiar with the site, and find out all of the different things that you can do. You can also see the budget there. You can, what else? You can find bills and laws, of course. You can sign up for
Mhm.
hearings to testify at hearings. So it's really cool. And again, similarly to the congress.gov site, you can find your legislator at that link that you see on the screen. And after you type in your address, it will come up with your state senator and representative. Back to you, Gerard, to
Thank you
talk
again,
about.
Vita. Yeah, to talk about ways to connect with your legislators. So we know how to find them. Here's a few ways to connect with them. But again, here's Gerard with the same old broken record. I do want to emphasize that the further explanation of this slide can be found in our toolkit. And I know that sounds I keep referencing it. It's just because a lot of this information that we're talking to you about, Via and I was talking about it when planning this out, is it is found in the toolkit. And so this was designed for the advocates so that it's a one-stop shop. So again, I just want to emphasize that what I'm talking about, you can further find in the toolkit to kind of for more of an explanation, or you could just reach out to us too. That's also another one. But some ways you can contact your legislators is through phone calls. Again, these are fast, effective, and often they're tracked by the issue. So staffers do take note of how many phone calls come in on this topic. So you might see emails, and I know now more than ever, you've probably seen tons of emails coming out being like, call your member, do this, write to your member. It's because staffers track these. So let's say it's an issue on, I don't know, let's just do a hot topic one. Like, and again, I don't want to go further into it, but Medicare, Medicaid, all that stuff. If a member of Congress, that one office is getting 100, 200, 300 phone calls from their constituents on that issue, maybe they should be paying attention to uh, more attention to it, basically. So again, they're quick, fast phone calls, but the focused message really counts, and that's why we have to be unified sometimes when talking about a certain advocacy issue. Because again, 200 calls are coming into one office, 100 to another. This is a hot topic issue that the members should be paying attention to. Emails, a great way to share your personal story. They can be a little bit longer and it gives you more time. Like you're not talking to them directly, you're writing down your story, writing down your thoughts. You could be very specific, very emotional too, if you would like. And you can clearly state what you're asking for. But again, you want to be respectful and make your ask clear. Um, the thing is that I say with it is that, you know, you can go more in depth on your story through email, but don't write like a huge, and for lack of a better term, novel on everything. Because again, like a staffer's reading this at their desk and on the Capitol, they need to know what you're asking for and just a little bit about who you are. But again, emails are a great way to really start making that first professional connection. We were talking about earlier, town halls, public events where you can ask questions, raise concerns. And I'm sure a lot of you seen on Facebook, Instagram, wherever you're on social media, a lot of members advertise town halls. You know, if you're attending regularly, it helps build your name. They put a name to the face and your credibility because you're constantly talking about a certain issue. Uh, a great way to know if your member of Congress is doing a town hall is sign up for their newsletter. Every time I go to a member of Congress's website just to see like where their offices are located or to get their number to call their office to ask a question, I always get a little pop-up bubble that says like join our newsletter list. So I guarantee you every single member has a newsletter list and I'm a part of multiple, specifically a lot of members on the appropriations committee, but yeah, that's a great way to know what's going on in your local district and where you can find your member because again, it might be hard to get a meeting with them. Again, you have to be persistent about that, but just go where they are because they're in your own community. Um, and then that leads us to the next part is the meetings is so if it's virtual or in person, they're another in-depth chance for you to tell your story, share your experiences, educate the lawmaker, the office on a certain policy issue. Um, we're going to talk a little bit about more of communication tips, but remember, stay on message, prepare ahead, and always follow up, and we'll go more in depth on that. So if we can go to the next slide. So again, communication is key when speaking to these offices. Um, Vita and I, we developed some of these helpful tips for you to follow along as you're out there on this great advocacy journey. But again, these are all based off, again, here he goes. Where are these all based off of? The Grassroots Advocacy Toolkit. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be annoying like that. But make sure that you are, you're be prepared. Research who your member of Congress is, know what their priorities are. A lot of times when you go on their websites, it'll show you like what their voting record is, what committees they sit on, and what are some of their priorities they want to bring back to their own local community and understand that issue. And as we all know, experience is the best way to educate and teach someone because you are your own person and you know exactly what needs to get done. So I have the utmost, confidence that you all understand what the issue would be. But if you don't, you can always do a quick Google search. Go to SCIboston's website or Reeve Foundation website. We have a lot of fact sheets on certain types of issues. So, yeah, definitely. And just make sure you have those personal stories ready. We're going to talk about, clearly defining your ask. Remember, be direct. Always go into a meeting with a request for specific action. So, like, can you co-sponsor this bill? Can you fund this? Make sure you have that clear ask so that they understand what you're asking for. Again, keeping it personal. Explain how the issue impacts yourself, impacts a family member. If you're a caregiver, how does that impact, like, if you're a caregiver for someone who's impacted by paralysis, like, share that with them so that they understand where you're coming from. Remember, again, this is super, super, super important. Be professional and respectful because you can't go into an office, especially if they're a different political party than you are, and they've done things in the past that you don't agree with. You will get more and more out of the meeting if you are stay professional and respectful. You can recognize, your difference in opinion, but you can also share your side of it, and so that they can possibly see, the other side of things, and where you're coming from. And they might even turn around and talk back to you and be like, this is where I'm coming from. So again, even if they disagree, just maintain that positive relationship, and it really truly helps in the long run. you know Ensure that you engage with congressional staff. Again, you might not always get a member level meeting, but that is okay. The staff person reports back to their boss to talk to them about certain issues that they spoke to with constituents throughout the week. So the staff members can really influence the policy. So make sure if you are meeting with them, get their contact info for that follow-up email. um, and then again, I mean, all of them are important tips, but this is truly important. So you share your story, you have that clear ask. Make sure you send a thank you email within the next 24 hours restating that ask. Again, you don't have to do it right away as soon as you go right outside of the office. You could wait 24 hours, but definitely you want to just make sure, because then they're going to be like, again, if you had a very impactful story, they're going to be like, oh yeah, like thank you so much. They saw that email and they keep remembering you. And again, hold them accountable. Like if an office says that they're going to do a certain action, stay on it, because they could just tell you that and not do anything. So you want to make sure you hold them accountable, because again, that's why they're members of Congress. You and your community voted them into office. Again, you might have not voted for them, but you know what I'm saying. Like, you voted them in, keep them accountable. This is what their responsibilities are. They work for you. If we can go to the next slide now, because we're almost done with this presentation. But as you heard Vita and I over the last, 20 something slides, it's a lot to remember. So if all else fails and you don't really remember these communication tips, ways to contact, uh, you know, just remember to ACT. This is a very simple acronym, and I know we're adding more acronyms and jargon into this presentation, but it's a lot, and it can feel like a waterfall of information coming at you, and it just can be a lot to retain. So, like I said, remember to ACT. If you're nervous or just overwhelmed, you know, it's very simple. ACT. So A standing for anchor your story. So start with that personal connection to paralysis and why this issue is important to you. C, connect to the cause. Explain the issue the paralysis community faces and why change is needed. And then lastly, like we said, tell them what to do. T, make that clear, direct ask, support legislation, fund certain programs, take action on X, Y, and Z. It's a very short and simple acronym, only 3 letters, so it's easy to recall in the moment. It's action oriented, so ACT directly reinforces the purpose of advocacy, taking action. And it's a logical flow of anchoring your story, connecting to the cause, telling them what to do, a natural progression of advocacy storytelling. So now we're going to go into the next slide, which is talking about a certain advocacy issue known as, for in the Reeve Foundation's case, the Paralysis Resource Center funding request. So we're going to see the acronym get put to use, and I'm going to highlight. I have a sample story that I want to show you guys, and you'll see ACT in action. So the first one is hello. The first opening is hello. My name is, I'll just say Gerard. I'm a constituent from Long Island, New York, or Shore of New York. I'm here today because I live with a spinal cord injury, and I want to share how the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation's Paralysis Resource Center has been a lifeline for me and thousands of others in a similar situation. So again, this is your anchor to your story. Next up is, after my injury, I felt lost. Navigating life with paralysis is overwhelming. There's so much to learn about medical care, mobility, and just living day to day. But then I found the PRC. Their information specialist connected me with the critical resources, and through their peer and family support program, I was matched with a mentor who truly understood what I was going through. That gave su- that support gave me hope and helped me regain independence. Okay, you're connecting to the cause. So again, C, connecting back to the PRC. The next one is, the PRC is the only national program dedicated to providing free, life-changing resources to people living with paralysis. That's why I'm asking you to support full funding of the PRC at no less than $10.7 million in fiscal year 2026. This funding ensures people like me continue to have access to essential support education, and services that improve quality of life. Would you be willing to support this funding in the upcoming appropriations process? This is telling them what to do. ACT. So again, your anchor, personal connection, the second paragraph connecting to the story, and then you're wrapping it up by telling them what to do, funding the PRC, supporting funding the PRC next fiscal year. Um, Again, that could sound confusing to some, but I just really wanted to break it down. And again, I just made up this story. This was just something that I wanted to just clearly show this acronym, this act in action. But anyway, I'm gonna hand it back to Vita. Don't want to do any more cheesy jokes, but I'm gonna hand it back to Vita to talk about how we can stay involved.
No, I loved it. And I love that acronym too, because again, as you said, it's just kind of like it's so much information. And I know for even for myself, when we were creating this presentation,
Hmm.
it was like we kept trying to add more to it because there's so many different things that we can talk about.
Hmm.
And I know for a fact that we did not cover everything. We have not done that. And so, if you ever have any questions or you want to learn anything more, we're both going to be here for that. And I know for myself, like as Gerard was saying, I'm happy to help craft any like emails or testimony or come up with like,
Hmm.
what do I want to say to my legislator? This is the problem that I'm having. Like, how do I get my message across? Like, that's something that I am perfectly happy to help with. Um, so staying involved,
Hmm.
it would be great. You could come and volunteer with us at SCI Boston, or you can sign up for my advocacy emails if you aren't already. That sign up link is there. Again, I will put it in the chat momentarily. You could also become United Spinal Association Grassroots Advocate. You can see the sign up link there. They meet every month, talk about different issues. You get to meet with other local advocates, and I believe that the Reeve Foundation does something similar. So you'll hear about that in a moment
Hmm.
as well. But it's just like a way to get involved. They also have a Facebook group where you can kind of like share information. Um, and then they also have some like working groups. There's a lot of different options out there. And of course, you're not obligated to work with us at SCI Boston or at the United Spinal Association or even the Reeve Foundation. You are welcome to find any place organization where you want to advocate out there. There's plenty of people who are working on different things. Um, and as it says here, you can become an online advocate for change with the Reeve Foundation. But I'm going to turn it back over to Gerard because he's going to talk about that better than I can.
Yes, it's okay. Thank you, Vita. No, I mean, again, this has just been such a phenomenal webinar, but I am coming with everyone on this call for just, please consider signing up to be an online advocate. We have over 12,000 online advocates nationwide, and all are welcome to join. Yes, you can be an online advocate for the Reeve Foundation, as well as the United Spinal Association, as well as SCI Boston. It does not matter, but I would really welcome all of your support by joining up on this link to sign up to be an online advocate for change. You'll receive emails about upcoming action alerts and other information going on in the Reeve Foundation, because we do other webinars. We do a lot, and again, they're all for free. They can be found on our events page, but again, by signing up, you'll get these notifications. Also, if you want to take that step further and get more involved than just an online advocate, consider joining the Regional Champions Program. And you might have heard me say this a little bit earlier on in the webinar, but this program is run by me and my team, and it allows advocates who want to do more speak up and educate members of Congress on issues that impact our community. We refer to our regional champions as legislative first responders. So when an issue arises on Capitol Hill that's either good or bad for the paralysis community, we activate our regional champions so that they can step up, reach out to the members, educate them on the issue to inform them to make a correct legislative decision. Uh, Currently, we have 120 regional champions nationwide. Our goal is to get a regional champion in all 50 states and the US territories, because again, when our voices are multiplied in numbers, we get better outcomes. So I can, if you want, we're going to have our emails at the end of the presentation. So please reach out to me if you're interested in joining. But currently our number one priority right now is funding for the PRC next year. And by being a regional champion, we're asking our champions to reach out to the members to talk about a certain action that House members can take to support funding for the PRC. And I'm going to go a little bit more into it real quickly. There is currently a bipartisan Dear Colleague letter circulating the House of Representatives. It's being led by Representatives Brian Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania and Nikema Williams from Georgia. And the letter is asking House members to sign on and support the PRC for level funding next fiscal year, or we'll just say next year. Currently, we have 12 signers, but we need more. So if you take action on our newest action alert, which I will give to Heidi so she can send in the follow-up email, it takes literally less than 1 minute. And I believe if you do take action on our action alert, you're already signed up to be an online advocate for change, which is amazing. Um, but I'm gonna stop there. Again, I will send the action alert out to Heidi. She can send it out. If you guys just please, like, we can use all of the support, and it's always great to just kind of make it one click of a button. It's very easy, just like logging onto this meeting, to just kind of make a connection with your legislator. But again, we'll get to the Q&A. I just want to say thank you to Vita. Thank you to Heidi. Thank you to SCIboston, and for all of us joining us today, for inviting me on this webinar. I do hope you're all able to understand better, more understanding of the power of grassroots advocacy, and hope that we all get out there, we use our voice to make a positive change and a bigger impact for our community. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say right now until we get to Q&A. So please let us know your questions. If I don't know any, if I'll do my best to answer it, but if I don't, we'll grab your contact information. I can reach out to you separately. So thank you.
Thank you, Gerard. It's been lovely having you here. And, just to, say real quick, if you already follow my advocacy emails, you probably already saw that Dear Colleague letter along with a couple of other action alerts from the Reeve Foundation. It's one of those things, like, as Gerard was saying, like, just because you do advocacy with the Reeve Foundation doesn't mean you can't do advocacy on a bunch of different issues. Like, it's all going to affect our community, and working together is how, we're going to get the most amount of support and meet the most number of needs that we all have. There's a lot of programs that are possibly at risk with the reorganization of HHS, including the Paralysis
Resource
Resource Center, which is, important stuff, right?
It is very important. I can't express that anymore.
Alrighty, so it is time for Q&A. I am going to go to the next slide real quick, even though it's time for Q&A, just so that you guys can all see what our email addresses are. You can take that information down just so everyone has it as well, okay? Does anyone have any questions that we can get started with?
Any clarifications?
Yeah,
anything?
that too.
Because again, it was a lot of information. It really was.
I know, it was.
I'm happy that we're doing this. Like, this is, and I think before we even started the presentation, we were talking to some advocates already on the call, talking about, this is well needed for the paralysis community, for both of our communities. So please ask your questions. If not, that's totally okay. If you want to just ask a more personal question, you can just email Vita and I afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just wanted, before we get to the questions, I want to thank Vita and Gerard so much. That was incredible. So much information. Somebody did ask if you would be sharing the slide deck. Okay, so that's
yeah. Yeah, we could share it.
Yeah, so maybe for right now, if Vita and Gerard, if you don't mind, stop screen sharing just so we can see everybody in the group.
Absolutely.
If you don't, thank you. I know that Joe has his hand up, and I'm gonna actually remove the spotlight. Joe, go ahead.
Oh, Joe, you're on mute.
Muted. Yep, I see that. Okay. I actually don't have a question, but I've got a few comments. I've done some of this before, but one of the things that I'm going to have to do is figure out the social media. I mean, I have absolutely no idea how to hashtag or whatever. So I'm going to have to go out on YouTube or something and try and figure that out. But thanks for that kick kind of in the butt to do that. One thing, if you're going to be calling your legislators, don't feel bad if they do not answer and you do not get to talk to them. I mean, 99% of the time, you're not going to get to talk to them. It's going to be a staffer. But just have your information down. And like you guys said, they will take that and it'll get to the legislator. They'll have it written down. People, more people is better, because if they only hear from one person, that's great. You're getting in there. They at least see somebody's paying attention to this, but the more people you can get, the better. Public comment, if you're going for public comment, you can do that both written and in person. Now, I know here in the state of Wisconsin, we have the Joint Finance Committee, and they usually have 5 spots in the state where they'll go around to get public comment. If you're going for that, get there early. And I mean early, probably 2 hours ahead of time or whatever, and get in line, because they're going to take generally the first people that get there, and they'll ask them. And if you're not there early, your chances, if you come on time, your chances of ever getting to talk are going to be almost 0. However, do come prepared with your statement and your written stuff, because then you've got your written things and you can hand it to them and they have to take that. That becomes part of public record right as soon as they get it entered. Again, the personal information is huge. Add in your personal information. I mean, the legislators get tired of all the form emails that come out pre-made, but in those form emails, there's usually a spot for comment where you can add your own comment, add your own personal story there. Whatever you do, don't ever send in one of those without putting in some type of personal touch. That is huge. You know, add any bullet points, things like that, that you see are needed. When something goes right, if the legislation that you're requesting or whatever gets passed, or there are positive outcomes from all this, thank your legislators. Write them an email and say thank you for supporting this. You know, they're always getting the end where things are bad. This is what I want. They have people coming and wanting things from them all the time. A thank you is not there all the time. So if you can just send that thank you, that is huge. That puts a note out there, and they'll remember that. They'll remember that. So the next time you come to them, they'll hopefully pay more attention to you. And I think that's all the comments that I wanted to emphasize. So thank you. And thank you for the presentation. Yeah. It was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Judy.
Hey, Judy.
Hi, thank you so much. Outstanding presentation, so filled with great information. I don't have a question as much as I wanted to provide an example of a situation my husband and I ran into this week, which I thought might be helpful. You had one of the examples you both presented was on helping patients get from a wheelchair to an exam table. And we've run into that, my husband and I, several times. We've had to sometimes just leave the medical facility and we'll go back to his doctor. She'll send us somewhere else and on and on. This week, my husband had an appointment for an MRI of both parts of his spinal cord. And when we got to the facility, part of a major hospital, they were wonderful. They were really, really terrific. We mentioned that we would need help in getting him from his wheelchair. We had said it in advance, but we said it again when we got there. They seemed like, oh, I don't know how we're going to do that. Maybe if a bunch of us can get together and help, then we can do that. And I said, yes, there's also, if you happen to have a Hoyer lift. They had one Hoyer lift in the hospital. And we waited for, I'd say, about half an hour. We were lucky. It only took about half an hour to get the Hoyer lift. There were 5 people working with him. None of them knew how to use the Hoyer lift. It was my husband that educated them on how to do it. And again, they were wonderful. They took his education. They successfully helped use the Hoyer lift to get him onto the examination table. And things went well from there. His appointment was at 9:30 in the morning. We left there around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So along with education about making resources available to help people transfer from their wheelchairs, or from, even if they're not in a wheelchair, even if they just need help transferring onto an examination table, the education part of it is so, so critical to make sure that staff are educated to use the resources that are available. And I just wanted to share that real life example.
Thank you for sharing that, Judy. And honestly, like that's horrible that you guys were there at 9:30 and didn't leave till 2. But the fact that your husband had to teach the staff, I mean, again, he was, advocating for himself and showing them
Yes.
exactly what to do.
Yes.
I mean, it's not even just Hoyer lifts in hospitals, like even in airports. Like I've talked to
Yes.
many, many advocates that are just like, yeah, we got to the gate and they literally did not know how to even pick myself up and transfer
Right.
me over to the aisle chair to get into the airplane, and then that constant fear of like trying to teach them how to work if it's a power wheelchair, like how to properly
Right.
stow it underneath, which usually unfortunately ends up in the wheelchair being broken. But again, like that, thank you for sharing that though. Like, and you're right, there needs to be more resources out there to teach staff members that are in the healthcare force, and even in air travel too, how to properly
Right.
train, which I believe the last FAA reauthorization, this is going back to air travel, it does include some training standards for staff.
It
Wonderful.
does. Yeah, they're working on implementing it now.
Yes, implementing it. Yep.
Yeah. And Judy, I know we've talked about this before. It's so infuriating. It's so difficult. I want you to be aware that you might already, and other people, the United Spinal Association does have a toolkit on health access, and like has like mobility transfer rules underneath the ADA, some advice on how to communicate and advocate for yourself within doctors' offices, and some tips and tricks for the medical providers themselves. And there's also, they just added a new working group on health access as well, if that's something
Wonderful.
that you would be interested in joining, because
Mhm.
I know it's something you're passionate about, and
Absolutely.
me too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for
Yeah,
that, Vita.
I'm putting that link in the chat now, just so you know.
Thank you. Good. Thank you very much.
John, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do.
Sorry,
First,
it
I
was
would
muted.
echo everything Judy said. I've experienced very similar things. I've had orderlies simply lift me and put me on MRI tables, which they shouldn't be doing. It's not healthy for them either. But yeah, no, I've had very similar experiences. And, at Mass General, you would think that they would have these things worked out. No, they don't.
Right.
Not usually. And once in a while, maybe we can find a board. But no, my question was, I apologize, I was late, and we were referring to the toolkit, and I wanted to make sure I understood what you're referring to and where I could find it.
So sorry, my camera's a little weird, but this is the toolkit. It's again the background.
There you
It's the
go.
Grassroots Advocacy Toolkit. And Vita, if you could actually link that, we're gonna put it in the follow-up
Yeah.
email too.
Great.
But yeah, no, so this toolkit was designed to, like I was saying, a one-stop shop. So it talks about certain issue topics. We were saying air travel, affordable, accessible housing, caregiving, knowing your rights. And then it also talks about like a breakdown of the US Congress and how you can share your story and reach out to your members. So
Great.
that's kind of what a lot of, yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I was referencing the toolkit throughout the whole entire presentation. So I'm glad that you asked this question, because it is truly important.
Mhm.
If we can't find it right now, we can definitely go back. We'll follow it. Sorry, we'll follow up with it in the email, because there will be a link there.
Yeah, there are lots of resources on the SCI website as I was poking around and you were speaking that probably are interrelated.
Yes, yes. Again, this toolkit, it's a thick booklet. It's 56 pages long, but I do want to say you don't have to read it front to back. It's not a linear read. It's more just like you can hop in at any chapter and still be able to kind of get the gist of everything. And it does include like in the pages like see chapter XYZ to like for more information about this.
Thank you.
Joe, unmute.
Dang it. I'm not doing good today.
And I'm not quick either because I'm pulling this up.
Oh,
The resource. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Heidi. I'm like not trying to steal your thunder.
No, you should. You should. You should.
One other point I missed when I was going through my points is if you do get the chance to speak to legislators at all, be ready for a timeline. I mean, you're going to be lucky to get 3 to 5 minutes per person, depending on how many people are there to speak. So whatever you do, get your talk down to 3 to 5 minutes. And ideally, if you can bullet point things, that will be great and help you a lot in time. And Vita, I'm just going to throw this out here. I've done it before, but I'm not from Massachusetts, obviously. But I know you're there for the main resources, and that's true. But if you need any extra help in where you've got people that are trying to put legislation together and they just need somebody to talk to and bounce off their talk, I would be more than happy to be in here.
Thank you. That's so sweet of you, Joe. That's so helpful. And, you know,
No problem.
you're so practiced at this.
A little bit, yeah.
If I could just add, because I forgot to mention this in the presentation. I mean, I just wanted to kind of just reference, like, Joe, what you were saying, you know, make sure you have 3 to 5 minute story and, you know, make sure you're in for, you know, waiting on a long timeline to either get a response or anything like that. So I was talking about the PRC Dear Colleague letter about funding for next year of the PRC. And one thing that I want to just kind of just show as an example of how advocacy in action works is we had a regional champion. She was very new to advocacy, did not know a lot about it. And we were connecting over the last few weeks. And I said to her, I said, you know, we'd really like your member to sign on to this Dear Colleague letter. Like, we need you to write your personal story, reach out to their member. So I sent her the contact information from the House office. And I said, just, you know, go with the flow. Like, write down your thoughts. I assisted her in reviewing it. And, you know, she sent the email out. Within 2 days, we got a response from the office. And the office said to her, thank you so much for reaching out. Thank you for flagging this. I spoke with the representative. He would be willing to sign on to this Dear Colleague letter. And honestly, like, it was just truly like the stars aligned for that, because, you know, it's hard sometimes to get these members to really look at the issue. And, you know, and because she flagged that issue to the office and flagged that Dear Colleague letter, again, a reasonable action to take, they were able to talk it over and the member got to sign on. So again, this is truly like your voice does matter and it does have an impact, because this was the result of it. So I just wanted to just kind of highlight that.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments? Dr. Ruby's clapping.
Dr. Ruby, another wonderful advocate.
I think everybody here has done something to this effect. And now I have been doing it for pretty much 25 years. And you get better at it. And you refine your approach and you modify your approach. And I've given testimony at the State House pretty much for 14 years. And sometimes it's discouraging, but sometimes it's rewarding. And be out there. I really like the fact that you talk about the different advocacy, self, individual, system, and grassroots. Every day it's self-advocacy for my son. Every day it's advocacy for me to do what I want at the Mass Medical Society, or for spinal cord injury, or something that actually the spinal cord injury people are divided on, and that's medical aid in dying. Because my feeling is everyone here needs to have a choice, and everyone here needs to have autonomy. And you count. Everybody counts. And individuals, I like the one, I was talking to somebody and he said something about, oh, when we were at Washington and we were hanging, I said, yeah, my son was there. And the spinal cord community is a fairly well-knit community, I feel. And I get things from all over the country, and I'm very disappointed about the research that's going to not be available, the money for research. But as David knows, and Doug and everybody from SCIboston, that Massachusetts Walks Again will continue. Even though I may not be in the state, we're going to have a talk about this. But as far as advocacy goes, never give up, and
Exactly.
and just keep going until you can.
It takes a lot of.
I thank you all for being here on the call. I see that I wrote down everybody's name. I don't know everybody, but I think that the gala was wonderful, by the way. It was, again, wonderful.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
and I think SCIboston, the number of events that you sponsor on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, I mean, you really have more events even than the Mass Medical Society has. So, I mean, you could just stay with it just by doing the things that you offer. So I really thank you all for being on this call. And as far as advocacy goes, showing up is advocacy. And I'm a little disappointed that there were only 19 of us, but maybe, or 17 now, that more people didn't get to be on this call. But the fact that it's recorded and it'll be out there, be able to access it, that's wonderful. And Ryan is fabulous. I don't know if Ryan's still here, but Ryan, you're amazing with what you can do digitally and with the virtual. And as far as social media goes, forget about it. I cannot do it. I won't do it.
You know, I'm going to say
and you don't
something
have to.
that I learned a long time ago when I was a theater kid. There are no small parts. Everyone plays one.
Right.
Exactly.
So thank you all for listening to my discussion. Thank goodness my wife now is not here, so I don't have to wear those crazy headphones. But really, it's a pleasure to work with you all. And I may not be in the state right now. I'm in Connecticut, not in Massachusetts. But my heart will remain in Massachusetts for a long time. So I'm going to sign off then.
Thank you, Dr. Ruby.
Thank you, Dr. Ruby.
We appreciate your support and always your inspiration to continue advocating.
And actually, I know that, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to say that I know that, you know, Dr. Ruby mentioned that he's out of state, and we know that Rolling's out of state as well. I forgot to mention earlier that each state has their own legislative site as well, where you can find bills, and it's not like exactly the same as the MA legislature, but it will be a good resource for you to use as well. And if you need help finding it, I'm happy to help you find that information. And I know we only have a few minutes left, but I think Josh had a question.
Yeah, Josh, go ahead.
Go for it, Josh.
Yeah, I'll kind of echo what everyone else said. And, you know, the presentation's been awesome. My question is more based, I guess, around how to advocate without polarizing an audience too much. Like I do graphic design, and you know, I've started adding advocacy into like my social media and my blog and stuff. And it's tough for me sometimes because I'm a centrist politically, but I recognize all these policy and legislation and judicial challenges that are concerning. So I started voicing my opinion, and once you start arguing politics on social media, it just becomes an echo chamber. So I wonder if you guys have any tips on how to maybe. I just try to stick to the facts when I do post, and it's hard for me sometimes because I get heated, and it's just difficult. So I'm just curious if you guys have any suggestions or tips.
That's a great question, Josh. And honestly, and you're right, it is hard sometimes, especially nowadays. But I feel like what I tell a lot of the advocates is mostly like, trying to see the issue and trying to see the other side of things. And I know that's not really the greatest answer because it is it is hard to do. But in the realm of disability advocacy, this should be a bipartisan issue. Like it try to frame the issue as bipartisan. So, you heard about talking about the Paralysis Resource Center and funding. Like, try if you're talking to someone that is opposing your political side, maybe like framing it as like, giving more dignity, fairness, freedom to the own SCI community, to the disability community, and showing that like if you do this, it gives a better quality of life for me, my family members, stuff like that. So, and stick to your personal stories. Like, don't talk about like stick to yourself. And I think Dr. Ruby was saying like, like we all do a little part. We all have a little part in this, and if you stick to your personal stories on how a certain issue will impact you, let someone on the opposing side of you try to come at you and say like, oh, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in this. Or because, if you stick to your personal story, it can truly, it really, it kind of derails all of the rebuff of the opposite side. Because again, like, we're like, again, this issue will personally impact me. It will personally impact my community. That's why I believe this, and that's why this is so important. Let someone comment back at you on the social media and tell you that, because people won't do that. It won't be a good look for them, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, no,
And
so
if they do, that whatever you say is probably not going to be the most productive
exactly.
conversation anyways, or maybe the best use
Exactly.
of your time. And, we all hear things and see things a lot differently from each other. And sometimes our difference in perspectives can cause a lot of tension, especially right now. And, when I'm talking about, an issue that might be divisive, I often, like you said, like to stick to the facts as much as possible, stick to my own personal story, my own personal feelings about the issue. And I also try to understand the opposing point of view as a means to make my stance stronger.
I like that, Vita. Yeah, but really sticking to the personal story, sticking to the fact, just like you were saying, I think that's how you can go about it. And like Vita was saying, Josh, if your personal story, these facts are falling moot, I guess, to that opposing person, then you're not really going to get anywhere with your conversation.
right. Awesome. Thanks for the advice, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Josh, you might as well go ahead and pop your, for anyone who isn't already following you, because your work is fabulous, your Instagram on there.
Oh, I don't need to add the plug or anything. I think.
No, please add it in.
Please.
I was actually going to look it up, but yeah.
I know, I want to
didn't
look
wanna
at it.
get
You said you were doing
distracted.
advocacy stuff now. I want to see what you're doing.
Yeah, I
Yes.
made my own little advocacy page, and
It's great. It's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yay, social media. That's a great way to use social media, which also, for those of you who are not comfortable with social media, neither am I. I am terrible at it. Okay. So we all need people like Josh in our lives.
Yeah. And
Yeah, and
Gerard, just so you know, Josh leads our very popular Thursday SCI support group, virtual group.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. We're at time, but I can quickly Joe, do you have something quick?
Oh,
I was just going to
Yep, there you
tag
go.
on to Dr. Ruby saying the low number of people here today. I have to agree that I'm disappointed, but I think part of that is people, one, they just don't know where to even start. One, they're probably afraid. I mean, I remember the first time talking to legislator, I was as nervous as can be.
Me
Don't know
too.
how to do that. I mean, until you do it a few times. I mean, they're just people. They're just like another person. You just talk to them like another
Exactly.
person. But if
hmm
people don't know that or understand that, they're not going to do it. You almost need one of these sessions where it's a advocacy 101, how to do it, what are the tips, there's so many things to even get started, because I would think probably people have no idea even where to start. So I think that's one thing about the numbers being low, because I just look back when I first started this. I mean, until I had some experience, just didn't know, had no idea. So yeah, I agree with you, Dr. Ruby. I was disappointed in the number of people here today. I was hoping there'd be more to learn.
Yeah. Well, we are recording it, and we do
hmm
kind of get to see how many
That's good.
people are
Yep.
watching our getting to view our things. So
YouTube's.
and we
Yeah.
did have a total of 24 people altogether. They have
Oh,
not
that's awesome.
Oh, that's good.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So they're
I'm keeping track.
better.
Yeah. It was a busy weekend
Better.
also. Mother's Day is tomorrow.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mother's Day
Oh,
is
that's
You know,
right.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
It
you know.
happens. It happens. I know that a lot of people had emailed me to tell me they were interested and excited about it. Also, many people saying, will this be recorded? So maybe we
Okay.
can end with Dr. Ruby. If
Thank you
something-
again for putting this together. I have 3 statements
Yes, thank you.
to encourage people. The personal story is it. You've got to give the personal story. That could be your credentials, and that could be your drama or your crisis made into opportunity. Purpose, passion, and persistence. And that's what I'm hearing from all of us. We have a purpose, define it clearly. We have a passion. My son has been injured for 25 years. And that's why I moved to Connecticut now, finally, because my wife said enough. And persistence. Don't give up. And I did spend a half an hour with a legislator just the other day, and I presented all the facts. I presented the personal story. I presented everything. And at the end, she made a statement, and I listened to it. And I'm thinking to myself, this is where she's at. My mind's made up. Don't confuse me with the facts. You can't, a person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. And that's why you just gotta keep on with the momentum, with the numbers, and never give up. So that's my 3 messages: personal story, purpose, passion, persistence. And even if they don't give you the time of day, just say that's their problem, because eventually they'll be disabled too. We're all just temporarily able.
There you go, Josh. You got some material there for your comments.
Thank you, Dr. Ruby, for saying that. I mean, you hit everything right on the nail. Like that, exactly. Like, I second that.
Beautifully said.
So yeah, it was beautifully said, honestly. And I'm see again, like the way he said that, I haven't heard something like that before, like purpose, passion, persistence. I'm honestly gonna use that now, like every now and then. So thank you, Dr. Ruby. Like again, that really that hits somewhere with me. So thank you for saying that.
You're welcome.
This is a very good question that Kay has. When you add your personal story, does that become public record?
So it depends on what advocacy action you're taking, right?
Yeah.
So if you're just having like a one-on-one conversation with your legislator, or a meeting like that, it does not become public record. It's something that kind of stays between you and your legislator. If you are submitting testimony at a hearing, or if you are providing commentary during a public comment period, that does become public record. And never, as Gerard said at the beginning, your story is your most powerful tool in advocating, but never feel like you have to share anything.
Exactly.
The idea is to not make, like, we never, ever, ever want to make life harder for ourselves when engaging in advocacy, unless it's something that we are comfortable with doing, right? We want to be comfortable with what we're sharing.
Exactly. And yeah, you should never feel obligated, because that is not something that we never want to put you in a position where you feel awkward or vulnerable. And it's okay, like when you are sharing your story and you want to do it, like it's okay to feel vulnerable like that, but never like feel that you have to do this because you're living with paralysis, because that's not the case.
Right.
Like you don't have to do it. It's just, it's an opportunity that you can, if you would like.
Yes. Yes. And I'm aware that a lot of us have stories after acquiring spinal cord injuries that might be traumatic, and it could be re-traumatizing to share those stories. And so, you know, you want to, you know, protect yourself and protect your mental health, and figure out a way to share, advocate about stuff that, you know, isn't going to cause any personal harm. And, you know, I'm happy to help you kind of like think about how to advocate in a way that's comfortable for you as well.
Exactly.
Wow, thank you. I'm sorry we went a little bit over, but such great comments and questions.
This is such a great conversation. Like, yes, no, please. If anyone has any other things that they want to share with me, please email me.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for you, Gerard, and Vita, for like again, like just sharing all of your expertise, your knowledge, your like wonderful enthusiasm, which is really infectious. So it's all just greatly appreciated. I'm so thrilled that you're here and that you put so much time into this presentation, and that we were able to record it and have information to share with others. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who attended. Really great information, so much to learn. And thank you for sharing your stories as well.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you,
Thanks for giving us the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Good job.